My wife cheated on me, found real love, and now wants me to take care of her partner's child. But I refused because it is the right of my biological children. I'm 38 now, a man with two incredible kids, and an ex-wife who seems to think co-parenting is a game of manipulation. I've tried for years to keep it civil, but I'm done playing the nice guy. My name's Adam, and this is the story of how my life turned upside down and how I fought for my kids. Let's rewind a little so you understand how it all started. I was 27 back then. I had a decent job, went to the gym, hung out with my boys, living life without any real care. That is until one day when my buddy Phil threw a BBQ. That's where I met Brittany. She was across the yard, laughing, looking like she stepped out of a commercial. I made some dumb joke about the burgers being extra crispy, and she actually laughed. Thought he was being smooth, and 8 months later we were married. Yeah, I know, hindsight is 20/20. At first, things weren't bad. Not perfect, but not a disaster either. Then she got pregnant with our son, Declan. Man, I was on cloud nine. I remember holding him for the first time. Little guy had me eyes in her nose. I just stood there with him wrapped up like a Chipotle burrito, trying not to cry. Those early days were wild. I'd work all day, come home, and pull the night shift so she could sleep. One night, Declan just wouldn't calm down. I walked circles around the living room for 3 hours straight, singing anything I could remember. Finally, he passed out on my chest, and I froze. Didn't want to move, didn't want to wake him, and honestly didn't care that I had work in the morning. I felt like Ethes was where I was supposed to be, but something shifted. After those early weeks, Brittany became distant, started finding flaws in everything I did. I'd come home from pulling overtime to help with baby expenses, and she'd barely look up from her phone. "You didn't fold the laundry right," she'd say. "The baby's been fussy all day, and you're just now walking in. Must be nice to escape." I'd be standing there exhausted from a 10-hour shift, wondering what the hell happened to us. Still, I tried. Made breakfast before work, took night shifts with Declan, planned date nights, but nothing worked. There was this one night, about 3 months after Declan was born. I planned a whole surprise for her, got my mom to watch the baby, made reservations at the restaurant where we had our first date, even bought her this necklace she had been eyeing before she got pregnant. I was hyped, thinking that this would be our turning point. I came home early with flowers and told her to get dressed up. Her response? She sighed, like I had just asked her to climb Everest. "I don't feel like going out. Can't we just order pizza?" I tried to hide my disappointment. I thought it would be nice to have some time just for us. "Mom's already on her way to watch Declan," I said. She rolled her eyes. "Fine, give me 30 minutes. Those 30 minutes turned into an hour. She spent it scrolling on her phone, barely getting ready. Dinner was awkward as hell. She spent most of it texting, barely making conversation. When E gave her the necklace, she just said, "Thanks," with all the enthusiasm of someone being handed a grocery receipt. I remember driving home in silence, the necklace box burning a hole in my pocket, wondering if this was just a phase or if my marriage was already over. Then, boom, she was pregnant again, just as Declan was turning one, and that's when everything started to unravel. She was texting constantly, but the moment I walked into the room, she'd flip her phone over. Classic sketchy behavior. I'd ask who she was talking to, and she'd get defensive. "What, I'm not allowed to have friends now? You're so controlling. He wasn't born yesterday." Something was off. The pit in my stomach grew every day. One night, I got up to check on Declan and saw the glow of her phone in our dark bedroom. It was 2:00 a.m. Who the hell texts at 2 a.m.? Unless it's someone you're into? I didn't say anything, but I started paying more attention. She'd take her phone to the bathroom, step outside for fresh air during dinner. All the classic signs. After our daughter Zara was born, things got even worse. One night, Brittany's phone lit up while she was in the shower. Message from some guy named Jason at work. "I miss talking to you too." Emotional cheating. No doubt about it. I didn't confront her right away. I just observed. She started pulling away even more, always on her phone, cold as ice. One night, after the kids were down, I brought it up. "Something's off. We don't talk. We don't connect. Feels like we're just roommates now." She didn't even blink. "I'm tired. I pushed out 2 of your kids in 2 years. Sorry, I'm not in the mood to play happy wife. I just stared at her. This isn't about playing anything, I said. It's about basic respect, she snapped. Maybe you should have thought about that before getting me pregnant, Tegan. I just stared at her. We both wanted Zara. I wasn't looking for a fight. Whatever. I'm going to bed. And just like that, the switch flipped. I was done chasing something that wasn't there anymore. But I still showed up for the kids. Handled what needed handling. But I stopped expecting anything from her. She wasn't my partner anymore, just someone I shared a roof with. Honestly, the silence was easier than the constant digs and cold shoulders. 4 months after Zara was born, I came home from work and there it was. Divorce papers on the kitchen table. No discussion. No attempts at counseling. Just I'm done. I deserve better than this, she said, standing there like she was the victim. You're cold and unavailable, she told me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to show her the 57 unanswered texts I'd sent her over the past month, asking if she was okay, if we could talk, if there was anything I could do. I wanted to point out that I was the one getting up with the baby at 3:00 a.m. while she was too tired, but I didn't. I looked at my kids, Declan, barely 2, and baby Zara, and knew a nasty divorce would mess them up. I remember that day like it was burned into my brain. I'm standing in the kitchen holding divorce papers, and it's quiet. Too quiet. Declan's on the floor building something with his blocks. Zara's knocked out in her swing. I'm standing there looking at the end of the life I thought I was building. But honestly, I'd already been gone emotionally for a while. I looked at her and asked, "So, is there someone else?" "Jason." She didn't flinch. Just said, "This isn't about another person, it's about us not working." It wasn't a denial. I knew then what I had suspected for months. So I swallowed my pride and agreed to a 50-50th split of everything assets, custody. No child support since we both had decent jobs. I remember signing those papers feeling like I just cut out part of myself and handed it over. The hardest part was moving out, setting up a little place nearby, and sitting alone that first night while my kids slept across town. I sat on the floor of my new apartment, just a mattress, a TV on a milk crate. I scrolled through pictures of the kids on my phone until the battery died, then just sat in the dark wondering how the hell my life had imploded so quickly. Those early single dad days were brutal. I'd be pumped to see the kids, then instantly overwhelmed. Juggling a toddler and a baby wasn't as simple as it seemed. The first time Zara got sick, I panicked and called my mom at 2 a.m. She calmed me down and told me it was just a fever. I stayed up all night watching her breathe. By morning, she was fine, and I knew I could handle this. The custody exchanges were awkward in the beginning. We'd meet in the parking lot of a Starbucks, barely making eye contact as we transferred car seats and diaper bags. Declan would cry sometimes when I had to leave him, and that gutted me. Zara was too young to understand what was happening, but Declan knew something was wrong. "Why don't you live with us anymore, Daddy?" he asked one day, his little face serious. "How do you explain divorce to a 2-year-old? Mommy and Daddy love you very much, but we decided we can be better parents living in different houses." He thought about it for a minute and asked, "Can I have 2 rooms? Kids, man." Resilient as hell. About a year after our divorce was final, Brittany met a new guy named Derek. Surprisingly, she didn't run to Jason, which showed me her true colors. Derek walked around like he was God's gift to parenting, despite being a part-time marketing consultant, which really means worked like 20 hours a week, while Brittany paid most of the bills. They got married when Declan was 4, and Zara was just 2. Suddenly, my kids had a stepsister, Lyra, who was the same age as Declan. And then they had another kid, Nathan, who's now 7. The first time I met Derek was at a preschool drop-off. I was helping Declan hang up his backpack when this dude in an Ed Hardy shirt, in 2016 walked up with Brittany. "Hey, you must be the ex," he said, extending his hand with this smirk that made me want to punch him. "I'm Derek. Heard a lot about you," he said. I shook his hand, keeping it brief. Wish I could say the same. He laughed too loudly. "Well, the kids seem great. Declan's been teaching Lyra how to build with Legos. They're like 2 peas in a pod." Something about the way he said it, like he was already claiming my son, made my jaw clench. But I kept it civil for Declan's sake. That's nice. Declan's always been good at sharing, I said, ruffling my son's hair. I still remember the first time I dropped the kids off at their new place after their wedding. Brittany had decorated the front door with this wooden sign that said, "The Johnson Ellis Blended Family," with all their names painted in different colors. My last name was nowhere to be found, even though it's literally my kid's last name too. I said nothing. Another battle not worth fighting. The real kick in the nuts came when Declan came home one weekend and casually mentioned, "Daddy, Derek said he's going to teach me to ride a bike." I nearly choked on my pizza. "Who's Daddy Derek?" "Mom's husband," he said, like I was the idiot for asking. He said I can call him Daddy Derek because he's like my other dad now. I had to step outside for a minute to collect myself. When I came back, I kept my voice light. "You know, bud, you already have a dad me. It might be less confusing if you just called him Derek." Declan shrugged. "Mom said I have to call him Daddy Derek because it's respectful." That night, I sent Brittany a text. "Can we talk about this Daddy Derek thing? I'm not comfortable with it." Her response came an hour later. It was Declan's idea. "Don't make this a big deal." I knew that was a lie, but what could I do? Force my kid to call this guy something else? That would just confuse him more. So I bit my tongue again. Meanwhile, I busted my ass to make sure my kids had everything they needed at my place. I got promoted twice at work, saved like crazy, and managed to buy a modest but nice house in a good school district. My whole life became about giving Declan and Zara stability and opportunities. Derek, though, this dude had the audacity to start with the passive-aggressive comments. Every time we were at the same school event, one parent-teacher night, I'm standing by the science fair projects. Declan built this sick robot arm that could pick up marbles. "Hey, man, how's that new car? Must be nice having all that disposable income when you're only responsible for 2 kids, Derek said. I was driving a 5-year-old Honda that I'd bought us, but okay, it gets me from A to B. It gets me from A to B, I said, trying to keep it civil. Some of us understand what sacrifice means for a blended family, he continued, gesturing to his designer watch, which definitely cost more than my car payment. I just walked away. These interactions happen constantly, but I kept my cool for the kids. The guilt tripping didn't stop. It kept escalating. Brittany started expecting me to treat all her kids as my own. It started with little things, like asking me to bring birthday presents for Derek's daughter when I came to pick up my kids. Don't you think it's rude to show up with gifts just for Declan and Zara when Lyra's standing right there? She'd say, like I was some monster for not buying presents for a kid who wasn't mine. Then it escalated to her suggesting I should take Lyra on outings when I had me weekend with my kids. It's confusing for the kids when you only take 2 of them, she insisted. They're all siblings now. I tried to be diplomatic at first. I'm glad they're close, but my time with Declan and Zara is limited, and I want to focus on them. That didn't fly with her. Wow. Way to make a little girl feel excluded. Real mature. This guilt tripping went on for years. I kept my boundaries firm, but still got painted as the villain. Meanwhile, when I'd pick up my kids, they'd talk about how Dad Derek bought them all tickets to Disney or how they went on a ski trip as a real family. One weekend, Declan was oddly quiet during our drive home. When I asked what was wrong, he finally admitted, Mom and Derek were talking about you last night. They didn't know I was listening. My stomach dropped. What did they say, buddy? He looked out the window. Derek said you're selfish and don't care about our whole family. Just about looking like the fun dad. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. That night, I pulled over to collect myself. When I came back, I kept my voice light. You know, bud, you already have a dad me. I love you and Zara more than anything. Don't ever let anyone make you feel like a problem. He nodded, and I could see the relief on his face. Okay, Dad. But the subtle digs at me not being part of their real family made my blood boil. I never said a word to the kids about it. They didn't need to be in the middle of adult drama. As the kids got older, Brittany's financial demands got more ridiculous. When Declan and Zara were 7 and 5, both showed serious academic potential. I researched and found this amazing STEM-focused private school, Westridge Academy. Tuition was steep, $12. Per kid per year, but totally worth it 4th education they'd get. I brought up the idea of enrolling our kids in this elite STEM school and offered to cover 100% of their tuition to Brittany. Instead of being excited, she immediately turned it into a guilt trip about Lyra. It wouldn't be fair if all three didn't go, she said, calling it divisive. She tried to pressure me into paying for Derek's kid, too. I held my line. I'll pay for Declan and Zara, and the rest is on you. She was furious, but guess what? They still enrolled Lyra using Derek's parents' money. These conversations happened constantly. Every expense, every opportunity, every gift I provided for my kids became a battleground where I was expected to extend the same to their bonus siblings. But the real breaking point came when my kids, who were so brilliant, by the way, got selected for this super elite tech camp called Tech Future in Colorado. Only 40 kids nationwide got in, and my two were among them. Declan's a coding prodigy who built his own mods for Minecraft by age 9. Zara is a robotics genius who won the state competition with a trash sorting robot she designed. I was so goddamn proud I nearly burst. They worked their asses off on the applications, staying up late finishing demo projects, writing essays, the whole 9 yards. I still remember when Wes submitted the applications. We were at my kitchen table, Declan nervously checking for typos, Zara bouncing in her seat as she uploaded videos of her robot in action. "What if we don't get in, Dad?" Declan asked, his finger hovering over the submit button. "Then we try again next year, but I think you've got this," I told him. When the acceptance emails came a month later, we were all together at my place. I let them check my email after dinner. The screams, when they saw congratulations dot, could probably be heard 3 blocks away. Zara literally did a victory dance on the couch, and Declan kept reading the email over and over like he couldn't believe it. I took them out for ice cream and promised them new laptops for camp. Their excitement was infectious. It was one of those perfect moments as a parent when all the sacrifices feel worth it. But when I mentioned it to Brittany during our monthly co-parenting check-in, her reaction told me everything I needed to know. She didn't say congrats or act excited for them. She got this calculating look that made my stomach drop. "So Lyra is also interested in robotics," she said, completely ignoring our kids' achievement. "Yeah," I replied, already sensing where this was going. "I think it would be really good for all 3 of them to have this experience together," she said, leaning forward. "And you should cover it since you're paying for Declan and Zara." I actually laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. "You want me to pay almost $8,000 for your husband's kid to go to camp?" I asked. "Just to clarify, I'm not having a stroke here, right? Our kids earned those spots." She just stared at me, then said, "Our kids are siblings. It's damaging to them when you create these divisions." "No?" I shot back. "What's damaging is teaching them that achievements don't matter and that they're entitled to things they didn't earn." Brittany stood up, gathering her purse, her face hardening. "We'll see about that. Don't be surprised if the kids start saying they don't want to go without Lyra. Are you seriously threatening to manipulate our kids over this?" I shot back, my voice firm. She gave me a cold smile. "I'm just saying that families should stick together. Maybe you've forgotten what that means." I left that coffee shop with my hands shaking, not from fear, but from the sheer restraint it took to not flip the table. The audacity. The next day, Declan called me, upset. Brittany had told him they shouldn't go to camp if Lyra couldn't come. Classic guilt trip. I reminded him that he and Zara had earned their spots and shouldn't give that up. Declan still wanted to go, but he needed to hear it was okay from me. After the call, I texted Brittany to cut the manipulation. Her response? A thumbs down emoji. Real mature. But that wasn't the end. 2 days after the camp discussion, I was at work, crushing a presentation I'd been prepping for weeks, when I received a text from Derek. "We need to talk about your contribution to the family housing situation." I nearly choked on my coffee. What the actual hell? I ignored it, thinking it was some power move that would blow over, but that Friday, when I picked up the kids, Brittany handed me a printed spreadsheet and a letter. It was like we were back in the 90s or something. The spreadsheet highlighted 50% of their $2,400 rent, claiming that my nicer neighborhood was creating an unequal environment for Declan and Zara. She said I should cover half their rent for consistency. I reminded her that my house, my money, and their living situation were none of my business. But she doubled down, saying it was about the kids' well-being, as if I hadn't sacrificed everything to give them stability. Then Derek showed up, like her backup singer, and had the nerve to say a real man would support their whole household. That was it. That was the moment I snapped. "You know what a real man does, Derek?" I said, stepping closer. "He pays his own bills instead of asking his wife's ex-husband to subsidize his lifestyle." Derek's face went red. "Watch yourself, man. The kids are nearby." I didn't flinch. "Then maybe don't start during pickup." For the record, I continued, "A real man doesn't use children as pawns to extort money." Brittany stepped between us, trying to break it up. "This isn't extortion. It's co-parenting. But clearly, you only care about yourself." I laughed, genuine disbelief. "Co-parenting doesn't mean I pay your bills, Brittany. It means we both take care of our children, not Derek's kid, not your new baby, Declan and Zara." I called the kids over to leave. As we drove away, I could see Brittany and Derek watching from the doorway, both looking pissed that their little ambush hadn't worked. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. "Dad, are you okay?" Zara asked from the back seat. I forced a smile. "Yeah, kiddo. Just thinking about what movie we should watch tonight." Back at my place after the kids were in bed, I sat on the back porch with a beer, feeling like I was going crazy. I called my buddy Phil, who had been through a similar divorce situation. "Dude, am I being an asshole? Should I be helping them financially?" Phil didn't hesitate. "No, you pay for your kids' expenses, school, health insurance. That's your responsibility. Their household bills are their problem. But what if the kids are suffering because their house isn't as nice?" "Are they suffering?" I shot back. "Do they have food, clothes, their own beds?" "Yeah, of course. Then they're fine." "Kids don't care about square footage, man. They care about being loved and safe. Don't let them gaslight you." He was right, of course. But the guilt trips were so constant, so relentless, that sometimes I questioned my own sanity. Was I being selfish? Was I hurting my kids by not playing along with this one big happy family fantasy? I stayed up half the night, finally remembering that having boundaries doesn't make me a bad father. But little did I know, this was just the warm-up for what came next. A week after the rent stunt, I showed up to what I thought was a normal parent-teacher meeting, coffee in hand, ready to hear how well my kids were doing. Instead, I walked into an ambush. Brittany, Derek, and the counselor were all sitting there with serious faces. Turns out, Brittany had turned it into a surprise intervention. She claimed my inconsistent parenting was emotionally harming the kids because I only take my own kids on outings, wouldn't pay for Lyra, and live in a nicer house. Basically, I was being accused of not funding their fantasy of one big happy unit. I sat there in disbelief as Derek whipped out his phone and started showing photos from their family vacation to San Diego. "See how happy all 4 kids are together," he said. But then when he takes just Declan and Zara, it creates this artificial separation. My face fell thought. Every instinct was screaming at me to walk out, but I forced myself to stay. Brittany jumped in, acting like she was on stage, tears and all, claiming Declan came home crying because he felt guilty Lyra couldn't go to camp. Total fiction. The kid had been bouncing off the walls about it for weeks. Then Derek piled on, saying, "Zara's been acting out because I treat her differently from her siblings." The same guy who barely knows her schedule suddenly thinks he's got insight into her emotions. That's when I cut through the noise. "Zara doesn't have siblings at my house. She has a brother, Declan. That's not confusing. That's the arrangement you both agreed to when you signed the divorce papers." Brittany shot back. "You refuse to acknowledge their blended family reality." I reminded her, "Their reality is 2 households. That's what they wanted. That's what we live." Then Derek leaned forward and said, "You're just threatened because they have a complete family with us. But punishing the kids because of your insecurity isn't fair." I locked eyes with him. "A complete family? You mean the one where you tell my son you're stuck with him? The one where my daughter gets guilt-tripped for being accepted into a program she earned on her own? That's your definition of complete?" Brittany started gasping like I'd just insulted her bloodline. I shut it down fast. "Save it. I've seen the messages. I've heard it from the kids. This isn't about emotional health. It's about you trying to control the narrative and my bank account. They kept circling the same script, playing victim and painting me as the villain for not towing their fantasy of one big, happy family. And when that didn't work, that's when Brittany dropped the mask completely. If you can't see how your behavior is harmful, we might need to revisit the custody arrangement. We're prepared to file for primary custody on grounds of emotional neglect. The room went silent. I felt like I'd been dunked in ice water. They were threatening to take my kids away because I wouldn't pay for their stepdaughter's summer camp, because I wouldn't subsidize their rent. Let me be crystal clear, I said, my voice calm despite the rage building inside me. I have never and will never neglect my children. I've provided them with every opportunity within my power. I've been there for every important moment of their lives. If you're suggesting otherwise, you'd better have evidence beyond the fact that I won't pay for Derek's kids' summer camp. Brittany smirked. We have plenty of documentation about your unwillingness to support a healthy, blended family environment. The courts take that very seriously these days. Something inside me snapped, not in a rage way, but in a crystal clear clarity way. I'd been playing defense for years, trying to keep the peace, biting my tongue. And for what? So that they could try to take my kids? I stood up, collected my things calmly, and looked Brittany dead in the eyes. We're done here. Any further communication about custody can go through my attorney. I walked out, my heart hammering in my chest. I got to my car, closed the door, and just sat there for a minute, hands shaking. They were threatening to take my kids. My kids. I felt a weird mixture of panic, rage, and oddly enough, relief. Relief because finally the gloves were off. No more gray areas, no more benefit of the doubt. I made 2 calls from the parking lot. One to the best family law attorney in the city, and another to my buddy Phil, who works in digital forensics. 4th next month, I went full stealth mode. On the surface, nothing changed. I kept the same custody schedule, stayed civil during pickups and drop-offs, and didn't engage with any of Brittany's baiting texts. I'd smile and nod and act like nothing was wrong. But behind the scenes, I was building a freaking fortress. Phil recovered all deleted texts between Brittany and me, going back 3 years, every manipulative message, every demand, every threat, all documented. I gathered financial records showing everything I'd paid for the kids since the divorce, school tuition, medical bills, extracurriculars, everything. The first recorded every pickup and drop-off conversation, legal in my state with single-party consent. I collected the rent demand letter and other written requests. I had my attorney draft affidavits from teachers and coaches about my involvement in the kids' lives. One particular afternoon stands out. I was at Declan's coding competition, sitting in the audience when I spotted Derek and Brittany across the room. They didn't see me. I watched as Derek checked his watch repeatedly, looking bored, while Declan was presenting his project on stage. After Declan finished, Derek immediately stood up and started heading for the exit while Brittany was still clapping. I recorded the whole thing on my phone. I even installed a dash cam in my car that recorded conversations during pickups, catching gems like Derek telling the kids, "Your dad just doesn't understand how families work," and Brittany saying, "Maybe if we ask Santa, he'll convince your dad to stop being so selfish about the camp." My lawyer took one look at the stack of evidence I handed over and started organizing it like she'd been waiting for this moment. No questions. No hesitation. Just straight to work. I didn't need a pep talk. I could tell by the way she moved this case was solid, and they were about to find out exactly how badly they miscalculated. I'd stay up late after the kids went to bed, organizing all this evidence, writing down every detail I could remember from past conversations. Some nights, I'd get so caught up that I'd realize it was 3:00 a.m., and I had to be up for work in 3 hours. I was running on fumes, but driven by this primal need to protect my relationship with my children. There were definitely moments of doubt times, when I'd wake up at night in a cold sweat, wondering if I was being petty or if this would hurt the kids in the long run. But then I'd remember that I didn't start this fight. They did. They threatened to take my kids. There's no coming back from that.